Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Look, we all deal with it, right? Fear. It's just fundamental part of being human. It can be small, like a nagging worry, or, big, really big, paralyzing sometimes. So today, our mission is to unpack a stack of sources. We're leaning heavily on this one book, Fearless, and we want to pull out the core ideas about, well, understanding fear, but also confronting it. All these anxieties we feel, it's not just about spotting the fears, though. It's about finding the antidotes and maybe some surprising facts, too.
Exactly. And these sources, they offer a really robust way of looking at this. It's not just theory. It's practical. It gives you a path forward. So our goal is to synthesize all this so you can take this information and, well, hopefully use it, turn it into real steps
Yeah.
towards being better informed, maybe even a bit more fearless.
All right, so let's start at the root. What the sources say is maybe the big one, the fear of not mattering. The book uses this amazing analogy, Stiltsville, you picture this place, where people are desperately trying to get lifted up above everyone else. They use external stuff, right? Like actual stilts maybe, or designer jeans today, or latching on to someone else's big achievement, like cheering for the Spurs, the book says, or even, and this is wild, holding on to Dean Martin's cigarette butt just to feel connected. Significant. And here's a thought from the book that really stopped me. Even parenthood, which feels so selfless, might partly be this. Noble reach for significance, too.
It's so pervasive, isn't it? This core anxiety, the source calls it the Amazon River out of which 1,000 fears flow, which is quite an image. And it leads to this feeling of, well, nothingness.
Yeah.
Or evaporation, as the book puts it, like you just come and go, no trace. It talks about fifth sparrows, that's the term used. For anyone who feels just insignificant, overlooked,
Yeah.
like those kids in that Chinese orphanage for the deaf and mute, just constantly told implicitly you don't matter. And the scary part, the really dangerous part, is how it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Think about a job interview. You go in thinking, oh, I'm going to bomb this, and that fear just makes you, well, bomb it.
Right.
Or the girl on a date, worried she's not interesting enough, so she acts weird. Or the basketball player thinking, miss.
And then he does. Yeah.
Exactly. The fear creates the thing it fears most.
The fifth sparrows. That's powerful. But, okay, the flip side. The book offers this huge counter message.
Right.
It says there's this deep, inherent value in every single person. You're skillfully wrought. That's the phrase. And fearfully and wonderfully made. The thoughts about you are more in number than the sand. It flips the script. Significance isn't earned. It's just there. It's who you are.
So how do we actually believe that? Internalize it. There's that great analogy from the movie Hook. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. With Robin Williams.
Right. And the little boy helps Peter Pan, who's forgotten who he is, and he says, there you are, Peter, just recognizing him. And the source points to Jesus, the carpenter, who, it says, refused to be stilted. He chose humility. He didn't play the hierarchy game. He taught this radical truth. You matter already, period. No need to climb. You just are.
Okay, so if we start with that we matter already, how does that change things, especially in our relationships? Because that drive to matter, it can twist into this other fear, disappointing people, disappointing God even. The book tells that story about Noble Doss, the football player.
Oh, that one's tough.
Yeah. Haunted for 50 years. 50. By one dropped pass. Cost the team the championship. He cried talking about it decades later. And that feeling, having wasted the first half of life maybe, because of mistakes, blunders, I think a lot of us feel that echo.
Well, the source traces this fear way back to Adam and Eve. In Eden, their fear was, what? Missing out. That God was maybe holding back something good.
Right.
And that fear led them to disobey. And then what did? They hid, which is exactly what we tend to do, isn't it? When fear strikes after we mess up, disappoint someone, we just want to run, hide, just like they did.
But then the antidote, the sources pivot to this.
Yeah.
And it's huge. Forgiveness. The power of just letting go, being let go. It mentions the simple prayer of confession and this idea of living free indeed, like truly free from that cycle of regret, self-blame, unburdened once you accept that forgiveness. The analogy used is like finding lost dogs at a shelter. You just want to scoop them up, take them home and say, you're lost no more.
Okay, so staying with relational fears, there's another big one, especially for parents, the fear of not protecting my kids. I mean, the anxieties are immense, right? From everyday stuff, feeding them, clothing them, to, well, awful things like custody battles where kids get stretched like taffy. That's the image used.
Yeah, that's rough.
And the book brings in the story of Jairus, the synagogue leader. His daughter is dying. She's 12. He begs Jesus for help. And the point made is that Jesus always responded to these parents, struggling parents of stricken children. He never turned one away.
And even when the news comes, it's too late. She's died. Jesus' words just cut right through. Don't be afraid. Just believe. That's it.
That shift in perspective is key. The sources say, remember, these kids are God's gift. They were his kids first.
Mm.
It points to Abraham, willing to offer Isaac. That's presented as this model of giving your children back to God, trusting him. It's about stewardship, maybe, realizing they're entrusted to us. Helps release that need for absolute control we feel.
Releasing control. That's hard.
It is. The book shares a personal bit about the author's wife, Denalen, how she walks through their house praying for her daughters, her husband, room by room, just entrusting them. And then there's the David Robinson story, the NBA star.
Like Admiral, right.
Yeah. Explaining communion to his son, David Jr., right in the middle of the playoffs, high-stakes games all around him. But he prioritizes this core spiritual thing. It's about focusing on the eternal impact, not just the immediate pressures.
So parents, like Jairus, they face this choice, despair or belief. But Jesus stepping in, raising the girl, that shows where hope lies. Belief wins. Okay, let's shift gears from those deep relational fears to maybe more practical ones, existential ones, like the fear of running out of time, money, luck, energy, whatever. And worry just generates constant questions, right? Constant mental work, like going through airport security. Your mind just races. Or trying to learn English after washing dishes all day, feeling swamped by the what ifs.
Yeah, and the book makes a really important distinction between legitimate concern, which is normal, and toxic panic. Fret. Worry, it says, accomplishes nothing. Worse, it dismisses God's presence. It kind of takes God out of the equation for the future.
It's like a dark room for negatives.
Exactly. That's the line. That develops the negative scenarios.
Yeah.
Look at Mary, the wedding in Cana. The wine runs out. What does she do?
She goes to Jesus.
Right. Straight to Jesus. Doesn't panic, doesn't catastrophize, just presents the problem. It's a whole different model.
And the book gives, what, 8 practical worry stoppers? Things you can actually do, like pray first, that's number 1. And easy. Now, just remind yourself to slow down, take action, but also trust.
Which connects to the next one, the fear of overwhelming challenges.
Hmm.
The author tells this amazing story about riding in a fighter jet.
Oh, yeah, the G-forces.
Right. Intense. And what did he focus on? The pilot's call sign T-Mac on his helmet. Something stable in the chaos. So the question becomes, what's our T-Mac when life feels like that? The book uses Peter walking on water in a pouncing tempest.
He wouldn't have got out of the boat if it was calm.
Exactly. Storms prompt us to take unprecedented journeys. That's the insight.
And Jesus' words to Peter then, don't be afraid, take courage, I am here. That presence changes everything. And the author makes it personal again. In the cardiologist's office, getting this scary diagnosis, atrial fibrillation, embolic stroke, what does he do? He consciously looks away from the scary words, the diagnosis, and stares at the doctor's diplomas on the wall.
Huh. Why the diplomas?
As symbols of God's accomplishments, his faithfulness, it's about where you fix your gaze in the storm.
Okay, and that leads right into the fear of worst-case scenarios. Again, there's a difference between prudence wearing a seatbelt and paranoia never getting in a car.
Right.
The book uses this picture, a living parable, of 2 sisters at a pool. One stays on the edge, cautious, risk-averse. The other one jumps right into her father's arms, trusts him completely.
Spend your life on the edge or take the plunge. That's the question. And we have to remember, even Jesus faced his ultimate worst-case scenario, Gethsemane. And how did he handle it? Repeated prayer, asking his friends for support. It shows us a way through intense fear.
And one of the most powerful ideas in this section is that no disaster is ultimately fatal. Think about Joseph in the Bible. Sold into slavery, ends up saving his family. Daniel in the lion's den gets promoted.
Right.
And that incredible story of Boris Kornfeld, the Russian doctor, killed for his faith.
But his story.
His testimony, given right before he died,
Yeah.
reached Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag, inspired him profoundly. It just shows, as the source says, God wastes no pain. Even worse things can be redeemed, repurposed, sometimes years later.
Okay, now for the really ultimate fears, the big ones the book tackles. Starting with the fear that God is not real, that maybe this is all there is. The sources mention Woody Allen, making movies to stay distracted because the big picture is too scary. And the author himself is honest about his own moments. Even on Easter morning, sometimes the resurrection story feels mythic. Like, is this real? It's a raw, honest admission.
And if you feel that way sometimes, you're not alone. The source explicitly says, periodic doubters of Christ, take note and take heart. The charter followers of Christ had doubts too.
That's comforting.
It really is. Think about the Emmaus Road story.
Yeah.
Those disciples walking with Jesus, but not recognizing him. He doesn't scold them, he walks with them, explains the scriptures, opens their minds. He meets them in their doubt.
Then there's the fear about the world. Fear of global calamity. What if things get worse? Which feels very now, very relevant. With all the predictions of wars, deception, Jesus' instruction was, see to it that you are not alarmed.
Or, as the source kind of translates it, don't freak out when bad stuff happens.
Yeah, easier said than done, but crucial.
And there's a vital warning here about false Christs and false prophets, people who minimize the role of Christ and maximize the role of humanity. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
The advice is, filter all messages. Ask this one question. Is this person directing listeners to Jesus? Not to themselves, not to a system, but to Jesus. That's the filter.
Which brings up far-sighted courage. That's a great phrase. It uses Admiral James Stockdale as an example, POW in Vietnam for 8 years.
Yeah, incredible resilience.
He said he never lost faith in the end of the story. But the optimists, the ones who kept setting dates for release, they died of broken hearts when those dates passed.
Wow.
It led to that quote, everything will work out in the end. If it's not working out, it's not the end. That requires looking beyond the immediate.
And then the universal fear. Fear of life's final moments. Death. The book contrasts the bleak views. Aristotle. Death is the end of everything. Jean-Paul Sartre. It's the great, perhaps. Just uncertainty and darkness, really.
So depressing. But then the author shares this really personal dream he had. An angel wearing a fedora coming for him.
A fedora.
Yeah. But the feeling wasn't terror. It was clarity. Love for his family amplified. Peaceful goodbyes. And he even talks about his actual prayer before surgery. Not knowing the outcome, but finding peace anyway. Facing it without fear ruling him.
So how do we get that peace? How can we be sure? The sources say Jesus built a sturdy bridge over that swamp of uncertainty. He promised many rooms in my Father's home, using wedding language his listeners would get, implying preparation, welcome, celebration.
Then homecoming.
Exactly. And the ultimate proof, the guarantee, the empty tomb, that's the bedrock. It shows, the book argues, that it's safe to die because death isn't the end. Over 500 witnesses saw him resurrected. That changes everything about fearing death.
Okay, so we've looked at all these fears. Now the ultimate antidote, what really dissolves them? Freedom from condemnation. And this profound sense of awe of God. First, condemnation, that feeling like there's a morality patrolman inside you, just writing tickets for every slip up.
Constantly judging, yeah.
The book points to Jesus and the woman caught in adultery, him stooping, writing in the dust, not joining the accusers.
And it makes a crucial distinction. Satan is the accuser, his goal, to steal and to kill and to destroy. Your peace, your dreams, your future. That's different from God-given guilt or conviction, which leads you to change, to repent.
Right. One tears down, the other builds up.
Satan's accusations just trap you in regret. God's conviction leads to restoration.
And the amazing news is Jesus isn't the accuser. He's our advocate. He is in the presence of God at this very moment, sticking up for us. Think about that.
Wow.
Offering unending intercession, which means we can have a clean conscience. The verdict is in. No condemnation.
How does that look, practically? Well, the book uses the Chinese character for righteousness. It's a picture of a lamb covering a person.
Covering them, sheltering them.
Yes. And then there's Jean Valjean from Les Miserables. Remember the bishop?
Bishop Mario, yeah, the candlesticks.
Exactly. Valjean steals from him, gets caught, police bring him back. But the bishop says, oh no, I gave those to him. You forgot the best ones. Gives him more. That act of grace just breaks Valjean. It allows him to believe the bishop's declaration over his past, to actually leave that old identity behind. Grace changes everything.
So freedom from condemnation is huge. And finally, the book talks about the one healthy terror, which sounds odd, right?
A healthy terror. What's that?
The fear of God getting out of my box. The author tells this funny story about someone saying he couldn't possibly be Max Lucado because he didn't look like the picture they had in their head. We try to box people in.
And we definitely try to box God in, don't we? The sources say God constantly defies our attempts to contain him. Jesus baffled everyone in his day. Think about the Mount of Transfiguration. Peter sees Jesus, Moses, Elijah. What does he want to do?
Build little shelters, tabernacles, contain the moment.
Right, box it up. But God's voice booms from heaven and shatters that impulse. You can't contain him. The idea is the longer we live in him, the greater he becomes in us, like Aslan in Narnia.
He's not a tame lion.
Exactly. And that healthy terror isn't being scared of God in a negative way. It's awe. It's reverence. It's recognizing his sheer untamable greatness. And that awe, that healthy fear, it displaces all the other fears. Like that little boy, William Ferris, praying calmly while his house is on fire. His focus was just entirely elsewhere, on God.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, a huge range of fears, from not mattering all the way to death itself. And the consistent message seems to be, yeah, fear is real. It's part of life. But it doesn't get the last word. The real answer isn't getting rid of storms. It's about who you find with you in the storm.
Absolutely. And the idea that God wastes no pain,
Hmm.
that challenges aren't just obstacles, they might be preparations, training even.
So here's something to think about, a final thought for you to take away from this deep dive. If this life, this earth, is like the womb, then could these challenges, even the really hard ones, actually be preparing us, equipping us for whatever comes next, for the world to come? What's the cup of unwanted stress you're facing right now? And how might focusing on that I am here, that presence in the storm, change how you see it? Something to ponder.